Hi, my name's Elisa Foster. I'm a mom of two, one with extra special needs. Welcome to my podcast, Happy and Independent, where I share weekly conversations with my network of parents, professionals, and experts from around the world. So let's change the world, one empowered, confident advocate at a time. Welcome, friends, to my very first episode of Happy and Independent. I am so excited to be finally taking this passion project out into the world. If you could picture me throwing a little bit of confetti and having fireworks going off in the background, that's basically the way I feel right now. As you know, I'll be hopping on weekly to share my conversations with professionals, parents, and experts from around the world that have helped move our family forward in our journey of raising a child with special needs. And I know they're going to help you too. But first, I have to go back to the beginning because many of you are coming into my story midway through, and it's kind of like reading a book without the intro. I've got 10 years of life as an extra special parent. You get to meet this version of me, the one that now lives in a happy and balanced space with a positive mindset, the one that for the most part doesn't have a lot of stress in her life. The one that now looks around and all she sees or all I see are possibilities. And then even when a roadblock shows up, as soon as I see it, I'm already halfway through a plan of how to get through it or get around it. The one that spends most of my family time laughing instead of feeling frustrated and crying. The one that gets to do 3-week road trips with my family, and we come out still loving, laughing, and enjoying each other. But as you get to know my story, you're also going to get to know that I'm the mom that was told, maybe you should teach Andy how to get dressed, because that's as far as he'll get. That one hurt. Andy shouldn't be in a class with other typical kids. He was only 4. Will he live with you forever? Will he ever know how to love you? Will he ever hug you? Guys, I've been there. I am there. I'm just 10 years farther down the road than you. Andy's now 12. So first, let me go back to the beginning. Let me share with you our family's personal story through my eyes. Andy was our first kiddo. Pregnancy wasn't the easiest thing. Whoever said that morning sickness was just a morning thing, they're full of baloney. I was sick the entire 9 months. I threw up more times than I can even count in a day. Now that I've had 2 kids, I realize that that's just the way my body reacts to pregnancy. It's kind of like I think I'm allergic to it, because as soon as the baby's out, within minutes, I'm totally back to myself and normal. Andy progressed pretty typically. In fact, at the beginning, he was often ahead of a lot of his peers. I remember when he was stringing 2 words together. My favorite memory is of Andy waking up in the morning and John going in to get him. And when John would open the door, you'd hear Andy say, "Hi, Daddy." We haven't heard that in a long time. Around the age of 1, my mom actually described it best. It was like suddenly the glint in his eyes went out. And my mom used to say it was like the world became a really serious place. All that amusement and that mischief you normally see in a little guy, that wasn't there. There were very serious eyes he watched and observed. He stopped interacting and smiling with strangers, or with anyone who wasn't in his immediate circle. To be honest, John and I didn't notice as much at first. We were first-time parents, and we were pretty involved, so he did a lot of the stuff with us, and we didn't know what to expect. As his second birthday approached, we'd finally come to the realization that something wasn't right. Andy wasn't progressing and thriving the way he should have been. So we went to our family doctor to get some answers. Do you know how hard it is to tell someone that you think something's wrong with your child? Actually, I bet you most of the people listening to this podcast knows exactly how it felt. It was gut-wrenching. Our family doctor referred us to a pediatrician, but I also remember her saying something like, "Oh, don't worry. Boys are just delayed in their communication. They just do everything later in life." And I'm sure she thought she was making us feel better, but I also realized that was one of the first times we were dismissed by a professional. So we go to the pediatrician, and it sucked. She sucked. She was about to go off on her mat leave with her third kid. She'd already checked out of work. My husband and I were pretty involved parents, meaning we were on the floor doing everything to get Andy to engage with us as much as possible, basically just showing off every skill that we knew he had. She never asked one direct question or even tried to interact with Andy. She handed us a 10-question questionnaire at the end and then said to us, "Well, looks like everything's okay. If you want, you can come see me in 6 months when I'm back." Again, dismissed by another professional. So on Andy's second birthday, we moved out to the country, about 40 minutes away from where we had been living. And we put ourselves on a referral list for speech assessment right away. And within 3 weeks, we got a phone call. There was a blitz in the area on Andy's age group, which was amazing because we thought we were months away. So we go in to meet with the speech therapist, and she does her assessment, and everything's saying fine. She thinks that you can tell that she's actually open at the beginning to listening to what we're saying and thinking that, yeah, maybe there's a little more something going on here. So we leave feeling hopeful, like we're about to get some support and some answers because nothing had changed. Nothing was going better. She calls that pediatrician, and next thing you know, it says on the report, maybe not in so many words, but it basically says, "No, mom and dad are wrong. It's just a speech delay. Sign them up for a course for typical kids." But here's the good part, because life always gives you a next step. And the good part is we did go to a speech class, and that's where we met our second speech therapist, Abby, who we still love and adore to this day. I don't even know if she knows how much love that my husband and I have for her. She was the first professional that actually took time to get to know us as a family, to validate our observations, to support us, to guide us, to trust us. And we ended up going to see a second pediatrician within that year. And just before Andy's third birthday, we had a diagnosis of autism, severe, and nonverbal. We had no idea what that even meant. We knew it was the right diagnosis, but we legitimately had no idea what it meant. The resources available now are not the resources when we were searching for them 10 years ago. So after a year of sort of floundering, doing whatever we could, trying to get every support, we were reading everything possible. Actually, I was reading everything possible. John was doing everything he could to be working and playing with the kids. And then at the same time, we also had our second, Emily, born. And this is when Andy started to regress even more. So he had regressed already with his speech had stopped. But then now also he was having major gut issues. The poor kid, it was like he had the stomach flu for a year and a half. He had regressed on sleep. He had what we thought were night terrors, and then we later learned actually it was pain from food that he was eating. But he would get only 2 hours of sleep a night, major gut issues, and we also had a newborn, so I wasn't sleeping through the night either. And John and I were both emergency service workers at the time, so we'd work these 12-hour shifts on 2 hours of sleep. It was not a good time in our family. We were stressed. We didn't know what was going on. We were lucky enough that we were both focused on being parents and diving into just being committed to that. But to say how our personal life actually was with him and I, honestly, it was almost non-existent. We were just focused on the kids. But there was maybe a couple things that we did that did, I believe, save our marriage during that crazy time. One, once a week, we would put the kids down for a nap and we would have lunch together. That's it. We would just have lunch together and have a conversation. Most of the time, the conversation was all about the kids, but it was once a week, uninterrupted time, him and I, 45 minutes. 2, once a month, we would do an in-home date, meaning we wouldn't have dinner with the kids. We'd feed them, we'd put them to bed. And I believe our favorite meal at that time for our in-home date was Caesar salad and cheese fondue and a bottle of wine. And we would have a meal together and we would sit and talk for hours that night. And we would just spend time talking. And I can tell you, when John and I look back at our relationship and the crazy time, we both shake our heads and think, oh my God, how did we survive? And the only thing that we've come down to is we continued talking to each other. We continued having conversations together. We'll talk more about that. I'll get John to come on one time and we'll actually talk about that. So in the meantime, Andy is totally regressing. He's only sleeping like 2 hours a night. He has horrible gut issues. He is so angry and frustrated because he can't communicate with us, that this poor kid is having meltdowns, and tantrums are not the same thing, but he's having meltdowns all over the place. We're incredibly stressed. We've got this new baby. It was chaos. So I know at that time we also tried for Andy. We went to a naturopath. We went gluten-free. We went dairy-free. We saw some improvement. But to be honest, it was really inconsistent. And then, lo and behold, just as we were losing hope, life brings us our next person into our life that we needed to meet. And she's a Heilkens homeopath. And she started to support us and to help us. And wouldn't you know, suddenly, Andy starts sleeping better. Andy stops having this stomach flu and all these gut issues that he was having. Andy starts to improve. Andy starts to thrive. Andy starts to grow. I remember one year he went up 2 sizes within 4 months. That's how behind he was on growth at the time. So we started to have this improvement and we thought, oh, we're good. This is good. And then that same homeopath actually said to me, and now, Mom, it's time for you to get help. And I looked at her and I said, I'm fine. And she said, fine's not an emotion. And I was furious. How dare she? Here I was, rocking it out as a special needs mom, getting everything done, still working, still had my marriage. My kids were fine. We were taking care of everything. I was doing anything and everything possible to survive. But she was right. I wasn't fine. I wasn't okay. And it wasn't okay to not be okay. But to be honest, I had been so fearful up to that point that if I admitted to anybody that I wasn't okay, and that if I did take the time to not be okay, that I would never get back up again. But you can only go on that for so long. I call it warrior mode. At the beginning, when you get a diagnosis, you go into warrior mode because you're fighting and just trying to figure everything out for your child. And you need to do that. That is, I think, kind of necessary at the beginning. But it's not sustainable for where you're going to go next. You can't be in warrior mode for the rest of your life. And she called me on it. And she was right. So I stopped. And I started to lean into taking care of myself. And I went actually for treatment for a solid year. And I improved. And within that year, we sold that dream home property, that amazing 50 acres in the country, and we moved back into the city. And everything that I had feared most became exactly what I needed. change. I needed change. I remember before we moved, I would pray for neighbors that would become like friends and family and that would support us and know us. I remember praying that the kids would have friends that lived on their street. I remember praying that playdates could be easy so that I could easily have Andy interacting with other kids. I remember praying for a school that would actually see Andy's potential and where he could go and not where he was at exactly that moment. And guess what, guys? When I finally took time to stop and I finally took time to take care of myself, suddenly all that stuff that I'd been fearing came true. It came true. We now live in a neighborhood that is surrounded by neighbors and friends that we consider family. We are now surrounded by friends that love playing with our children. We have a school that make Andy believe that he's a rock star. Seriously, the kid thinks he's a rock star when he goes to school. You guys are meeting me in the middle of my journey. Has it been easy? Nope. Was it immediate? Not a chance. Was it scary? Hell yeah. Was it worth it? Absolutely. I wouldn't change anything that we've gone through. I may not know the ending of our story. However, I do know that right now we are raising 2 kids to be happy and independent. And the definition for happy and independent will be different for each kid, depending on their personality as well as their abilities. I also know I have a happy marriage. One where we still like each other as well as love each other. And honestly, often, like is the harder part of marriage. Because you can love someone, but it doesn't mean you like them. I know that my family has a true circle of friends and family that love us, that know us, support us, and help us move forward. I no longer have to pretend everything's okay when it's not. I also know it's okay to not be okay, because it's temporary. I no longer live in a state of not being okay, but sometimes I might still have a moment, and that's okay, because it's a moment, and we all have those. So I hope you're going to join me for all my upcoming episodes and podcast journey, because there's a quote that kept appearing in my life for the last year, and I feel like it's led me to where I am right now, sitting and recording this. And the quote is this: one day, you will tell your story on how you overcame what you went through, and it will be part of someone else's survival guide. So, my friend, I hope I get to be part of your survival guide. I want to share my story of my family's journey about being happy and independent. I'm going to share those conversations that I have with my friends, my professionals, and the experts around the world with you. And I want to help you become your own empowered, confident advocate. Thanks for joining me. Can't wait to talk to you next week. Friends, that's all for today. I want to sincerely thank you for listening to my podcast, Happy and Independent, Empowering Special Needs Parents. This podcast was recorded at Wilfrid Laurier's The Switch Podcast Studio. It's quickly becoming my home away from home. And I want to thank the lovely and knowledgeable Avery Moore-Kloss from Folktale Studios for her mad editing brilliance. She makes me sound good. If you haven't shared, subscribed, or reviewed my podcast yet, please do so. I promise I read every single one. And the more you share and subscribe, the farther my mission goes to change the world, one confident advocate at a time. See you next week.